art from prisons or from having experienced imprisonment can be some of the most important works of art made, as they show not only the living conditions of prisoners, which are too often hidden from the public, but also the political conditions inherent to incarceration. In this video, we'll look at 3 different artworks by 3 different artists who were all imprisoned for their political beliefs or actions, and who made artworks either during or after their imprisonment. What can we learn by looking at these artworks? What do they tell us about dissent, repression, and the state? The first prisoner we'll be looking at is Gustave Courbet and his self-portrait at Sainte-Pélagie, made in 1872. Gustave Courbet was an incredibly controversial painter at the time, and he painted this artwork at the peak of his career. He had made several self-portraits during his career, many successful ones, including this one as a desperate man, which is probably his most famous. However, in Self-Portrait at Sainte-Pélagie, Courbet isn't as confrontational. He's sitting pensively by a window, almost expressionless. He's looking out a window, which contrasts the shadowy interior he's confined in with the sunny exterior he's cast out of. If you pay enough attention, you'll notice that this window has iron bars obstructing it. Gustave Courbet is sitting in jail. And he left us a clue as to why he's sitting in jail. He's wearing a red scarf, symbolic of the Paris Commune, which happened only a year before the self-portrait was made. Gustave Courbet was pretty radical, especially for his time. He was friends with Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, a socialist theorist who was the first person to call themselves an anarchist. He'd even paint a portrait of the man with his children. As an example of his radicalness, just 6 months before the Commune, he said that the Vendome column, an imperialist monument, should be disassembled and relocated. Inasmuch as the Vendome column is a monument devoid of all artistic value, tending to perpetuate by its expression the ideas of war and conquest of the past imperial dynasty, which are reproved by a Republican nation's sentiment, Citizen Courbet expresses the wish that the National Defense Government will authorize him to disassemble this column. This wasn't necessarily a new idea, as even Marx used the image of the toppling of this monument in 1852 in the conclusion to his pamphlet, The 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte. But when the imperial mantle finally falls on the shoulders of Louis Bonaparte, the bronze statue of Napoleon will come crashing down from the top of the Vendome column. So Courbet, through his associations and perhaps propositions, was a controversial figure, and we didn't even talk about his controversial artworks. L'Origine du Monde, for example, made in 1866, gave me a strike on my channel. I'm censoring the painting in this video. However, the painting is not censored in the video I made about it, which is sadly demonetized and I think age restricted, but it's still up. Go check it out. I think it's worth it. Courbet went from a figure of controversy to an insurrectionary figure in 1871 when the Paris Commune started. The Paris Commune was an insurrection rallying socialists, communists, and anarchists behind an anti-authoritarian project for the city of Paris, which was under siege by the Prussian army. Paris was self-managed by the working class, and Courbet was among them. Paris is a true paradise. No police, no nonsense, no exaction of any kind, no arguments. If only it could stay like this forever. It is a beautiful dream. So during this beautiful dream, this insurrectionary project, which I strongly encourage you to read more about, Courbet was elected to the Commune's council. He was also the president of the Artist Federation, promoting the ideas that artists should be in charge of art instead of the government or the salon. However, things turned a bit sour. The Vendome column actually ended up being toppled. The French army took over Paris after 72 days of the Commune, and between 10 and 20,000 communards were murdered in a period called the Bloody Week. Courbet survived, but was nonetheless captured, imprisoned, and told to personally pay for the restoration of the Vendome column, a cost of over 300,000 francs, which he could never repay. He was bankrupt. He exiled himself to Switzerland from 1873 until his death in 1877. This is the only artwork he ever made about the Commune, this red scarf being the only allusion to it. Over a century later, in 2011 in China, an artist was arrested and put in prison for 81 days without trial for tax evasion. However, especially because this artist is known for his criticism of the Chinese government and his human rights activism, it's widely believed that these charges were simply an excuse to intimidate him. This artist, also controversial, is the very notorious WeiWei. Following his imprisonment, I made an installation presenting 6 scenes. I here not being me, but being WeiWei. Fun fact, every time WeiWei speaks, it sounds like he's talking about himself in the third person. I made an installation. I took pictures. I dropped some very old Chinese vases. Anyway, these 6 scenes are titled Supper, Accusers, Cleansing, Ritual, Entropy, and Doubt. The installation is titled Sacred. These scenes are contained in 6.5 foot by 12 foot iron boxes, which you can only see the content of through small openings. In a voyeuristic way, you see scenes from Ai's detention, which not only show the oppressive and suffocating environment in which he lived, but also the constant surveillance he was under. This constant surveillance, of course shown through the presence of the prison guards, is heightened by our own presence as a viewer. Looking at Ai's work is to surveil him. It's to voyeuristically watch and do nothing. Perhaps the enclosed boxes are meant to convey a sense of confinement, a feeling that Ai is truly trapped in there. But how I interpret the way this artwork is experienced is by looking at how it turns the viewer's gaze into a tool of oppression, how it turns our participation into the surveillance criticized in the artwork. If the state is oppressing Ai, and if the state gains legitimacy through both our actions and inaction, then we, in a way, are legitimizing Ai's suppression. If Courbet made a self-portrait in prison dejectedly sitting by a window, Ai makes several self-portraits interacting with guards and frontally showing his living conditions. He's also confronting the viewers with their own role regarding his situation through their inaction facing repressive governments around the world. In this sense, though both artworks depict imprisonment, both have very different aims. One feels like a testimony of an experience, the other is a denouncement of it and a call to change it. But Sean, I'm not from China or Russia, I'm from a free country. I'm from the UK. WeiWei can't seriously tell me that I'm not okay with putting activists in prison. Terrible English accent. WeiWei can't seriously tell me that I'm okay with putting activists in prison. That was the line. When I visited the UK, I went to Hastings to meet Sue Tilley, friend of Lee Bowery and model of Lucian Freud, which I interviewed in this video. And I decided to visit Hastings Contemporary, a museum which featured an exhibition by Isabel Rock. Rock's installation was the highlight of my visit. Well, grabbing a pint with Sue Tilley was also pretty nice. But I mean, like, artistically, Isabel Rock's installation was really good. Welcome to your cell. Come on in, take a seat, make yourself at home. Please sit on the bed or the chair. Don't mind your roommate. At Hastings Contemporary, you could walk into an exact replica of the prison cell Isabelle Rock spent a month in, following a Just Stop Oil action where she climbed on gantries on a highway in the UK in 2022. She was later found not guilty after a jury deemed, after only an hour of deliberation, that her climate action was motivated by a reasonable excuse. In the perfect replica of the cell, which is in itself an artwork, you could find artworks made by Rock from her cell during her imprisonment, which, in an interview you can watch on the channel Art Plugged on YouTube, she explains she drew to help with her mental health. In that same interview, she describes her stay in prison, how it affected her, and why she doesn't regret it. I recommend watching it. I loved Isabelle Rock's installation, and it was, even more so than Tracey Emin's exhibition at Tate, my favorite artwork I experienced on my trip in the UK. It put you right in the middle of a prison cell, not as a voyeur, but as a participant. It's putting you in the shoes of a political prisoner. It's telling you it could happen to you. Not only did it underline the increasingly repressive measures the state is enacting to quell political action, it was also a personal testimony of that repression. It's confirming that this kind of coercion isn't only present in the past, as shown by Courbet, or in overtly authoritarian countries, as shown by I, but also in liberal democracies. What these artworks make evident is that no matter where there is authority, hierarchy, or any concentration of power, there will be resistance to it. That resistance will always be dealt with suppression, with state violence. And to anarchists such as myself, this is inevitable in any hierarchical society. As long as you have people in power, there will be people who won't like it, people who feel like it's unfair that someone has more power than them. No matter what, and it may not come immediately or successfully, there will always be dissent and resistance. It may not articulate itself ideologically as anarchism, it may not even be directly intellectualized, but it is present everywhere, because freedom, far than being just an abstract value, is a human instinct. And it is one that we see on display very clearly when artists make art about prisons. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I'm not too close to the camera. Let's back up a little bit. I should have done that maybe at the beginning. I was like, oh, I want to make like a confined, you know? You see the theme, a confined theme with like WeiWei, Courbet, prison and all that. I wanted to be the oppressor. I wanted to be right in your face and telling you, this is my opinion. Maybe that's not the dynamic I want with my audience. So let's back up a little bit. And while we back up, it'll allow us to present the patrons on both sides. There are so many patrons who who became patrons probably because of the joke I made about, haha, this is sponsored by NordVPN. And I got so many of you in the comments. You made it apparent that I did. I was really happy about that, and it worked. It paid off because so many patrons. Thank you, patrons. Hello, welcome to the patron, I don't want to call it family. That's way too parasocial, way too parasocial. Anyway, thank you, Rowan Brandel, X Towns, Chrissy Chris, and Bone Meal. I think it's Bone Meal and Chrissy Chris. I always mix those up. Oh, those two rascals. For being top tier supporters. If you want to become a top tier supporter, if you want to become like a normal supporter with these people here, check out patreon.com/thecanvas, where you can give $1 per month, as little as $1 per month, to appear in the credits. It helps out tremendously. It allows me to make these videos. Check out the new video that came out on the CBC as well. Check out an anarchist FAQ because I talked about anarchism in the conclusion of this video. Check out that video. That project, Anarchist FAQ. I haven't done it in a while. I've been really busy. I've been doing a lot of stuff. But go check that out. There's still a lot of really good information on anarchism if you're ever interested. And I think that's it. I'm working on the Antifa video. It might come out very soon. I'm still not sure what the angle. I want to go a bit humorously because it paid off in the last video. It got me some patrons. So I gotta be funny. I'll try to be funny in the Antifa video. I showed off a prop for the Antifa video that's coming up, and I showed it off in a interview I gave for a channel called Wank 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 Wank. Go check out Wank 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 Wank, where I did an interview with them and we talked about video essays, talked about art, politics. I didn't take it too seriously. I hope that was fine. I'm fucking around a lot in the interview. I decided to have fun with it. There is some serious answers in there, but there's also some fucking around. Anyway, enough announcements. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Comment, let me know what you thought. I read all the comments. I try to answer them, especially when the video comes out. I'm really like on top of it and answering. Sometimes I don't know what to say. Sometimes I just say thank you. Anyway, go check out the comment section. All right, Patreon, my Instagram, my Letterboxd. I cried to a rock in the Project Hail Mary. I made that a review. So go check them out later. My Letterboxd, see what movies I'm watching. And I'll leave you on that. Add me on Duolingo. I'm learning chess. I'm becoming really good at chess. Add me on Duolingo. Play against me at chess. But I'm still beginning, so don't be too rough on me. But I challenge you at chess. All right, on this note, now I'm gonna leave. Goodbye.